Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. The Daytona 500, the great American race, the crown jewel of stock car racing, the one that everybody wants to win. Yesterday, it kicked off the 75th season of NASCAR Cup Series competition, and we saw a thrilling race. Great side-by-side action, covers and goers all day, and a single car team pulls through with a former Daytona winner to really get this season off to a crazy start. Let's get into all that went down in yesterday's Great American Race. Number 1, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. driving for JTG Doherty Racing in the number 47 Kroger Cottonelle Chevrolet wins the 65th running of the Daytona 500, beating Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, and Polster Alex Bowman under caution on the final lap in a thrilling race from start to finish. I gotta say, I did not see this coming from Ricky Stenhouse Jr. winning the Great American Race. That was totally blew my mind. I mean, he made some pretty aggressive blocks in the closing laps of that race in overtime, but he was able to hold on and be in front at the moment of caution to pick up his third career win and his first Harley J. Earl trophy. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has had quite an interesting career. He started out in NASCAR in 2009 driving for Roush Fenway Racing at the time in the Xfinity Series. He had a full-time campaign in 2010, but unfortunately he kept wrecking a lot and missed a race, and Jack Roush had to sit him down for a little bit and said, just calm down, just sit on the sidelines for a little bit and try to learn from your mistakes, and then hopefully you come back in the car and you can perform like we expect you to. And he did just that. After sitting out for a while, he got back in the car and had some really good runs throughout the rest of the year. And in 2011, he had a great year that ended up with him winning his first ever championship, winning the Xfinity Series title, beating out Elliott Sadler, and did the same thing in 2012. And that led him to being a full-time Cup driver in 2013, replacing the departing Matt Kenseth, who went to Joe Gibbs. Stenhouse had a pretty rocky start to his campaign in the Cup Series. His first few years with Roush wasn't really going that well. They missed a race at Talladega in the fall of 2014 because of the group qualifying session. And the next couple years, he was running okay, but he wasn't running great. But 2017 was a breakout year for him, where he had some really good cars at the beginning of the year, and he picked up his first career Cup win at Talladega in the spring, holding off Kyle Busch and multiple others behind him. And that race showed you how good of a super speedway racer Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was. And the fun didn't stop there. He was able to win on 4th of July weekend at the night race at Daytona. And it was a pretty impressive performance, considering that most of the attention at that race was on Dale Earnhardt Jr. because it was his final start at Daytona in a Cup car. But Stenhouse Jr. stole the headlines by winning the race and quoting, "America 1776, we are the champs." A pretty nice comment to make, considering it was 4th of July weekend. And those two wins were able to help him make the playoffs, and he made it all the way to the round of 12. Got eliminated after that, but it was still nonetheless a great season from him. In 2018, he had some good runs at the beginning of the year, but his driving on the super speedways at the beginning of the season at the Daytona 500 didn't sit well with his fellow competitors. They called his racing moves a little too aggressive, and some of the moves he did caused a couple guys to spin out and crash in the middle of the pack. And then things got worse when we went to Daytona for the night race, where he was at the center of controversy, causing two big wrecks at the beginning of stage 2. A big wreck in turns 3 that took out many competitors like Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, and Joey Logano, and then caused another wreck later by getting into Kyle Busch and turning him into William Byron, taking them both out of the race, and that drew a lot of criticism from his competitors and the NASCAR fan base in general. After that, things did not really get better for Stenhouse. He wasn't performing well. He had a relatively rough 2019, and that led to his release from Roush Fenway Racing, so he had to start fresh. He picked up a ride with JTG Doherty Racing to start the 2020 season, and kicked it off by winning the pole for the Daytona 500 and had a good race car the entire day, but got taken out of contention after he was caught passing Ryan Blaney below the WL line down the backstretch, which is an out-of-bounds move. Stenhouse was taken out of contention, and things, after that were still kind of rocky for him and JTG Doherty Racing. He wasn't really winning, but he wasn't necessarily running in the top 30 whatsoever. He was just in the middle of the pack and just couldn't really do much. Same carried for him in 2021. And last year, he had a car capable of winning the 500 late till he got turned around in 3 and 4 by Brad Keselowski and into the wall. And the only other bright moment of the season was a second place finish at Dover in the spring. And a lot of people thought, with him, the way he'd been performing and how he kept bringing out cautions and thus earning the moniker Ricky Stenhouse Jr., people were wondering, does this guy really deserve to still keep his ride? Well, he did sign a deal with the team in the middle of last season to stay on with them for 2023 and beyond. And yesterday, he proved a lot of people why he still belongs in the Cup Series and deserves that 47 car. Yesterday, he started the race middle of the pack and just kind of hung there for the majority of the first part of the race. Then the second half, he started to slowly work his way up through the field, and it looked like he was in contention for a solid finish. But then we had the final round of green flag pit stops. He got caught for speeding and unfortunately looked like his day was done. But a caution came out with 20 laps to go. He was able to stay on the lead lap. He was able to catch back with the pack and started to pick guys off one by one after the restart with 13 to go and looked like he was going to be in position for a top 5 finish. Then the caution came out with 3 laps to go. And on the first overtime restart, he got a big push in the outside down the backstretch from Kyle Larson, dove to the inside of Joey Logano when he saw the hole there to make the move. He took the lead. A caution comes out. He's able to be the leader for the control car for the restart and had to hold off all those guys with all the challenges they brought and was in front the moment caution came out, and he wins the Daytona 500. This is the first time since 2011 with the Wood brothers that a single car team wins the Great American Race. Martin Truex Jr. nearly did it for Furniture Row in 2016, but Ricky Stenhouse Jr. pulled through yesterday with a fast Chevrolet, and his 47 team, owned by Dad Geschecter, Jody Geschecter, and Brad Daugherty are now 500 champions. Brad Daugherty becomes the first African-American owner to win the Great American Race, and Jody Geschecter becomes the first woman owner to win the Great American Race. So, pretty historic moment for that team right there. And with this win, Ricky Stenhouse is officially in the playoffs. But the big question obviously looms. Can this guy build off of this win and be consistent throughout the entire year? Because there have been times where the 47 team has not been running well. We're going to see what this team is truly made of after winning this historic race. But a big congrats to Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Michael Kelly, his crew chief, and the entire 47 team on winning the sport's most prestigious event, the Daytona 500. Number 2, Joey Logano, the defending champ. So close from another Harley J. Earl trophy. Logano entered the season as the defending Cup Series champion and was coming off an interesting Busch clash 2 weeks ago when he was called out by Kyle Busch for running into the back of him and taking Kyle out of contention to win, even though Kyle was able to work his way back up to a third-place finish. At the time, Kyle Busch called Joey Logano two-faced, saying he's a nice guy out of the race car, but in the race car, he's a whole different person. And Joey openly admitted saying, yeah, I am two-faced. Outside the race car, I'm a nice guy. But when I get in that car and I strap on my helmet, I'm completely different. And I feel like that's how everybody else is in general. It's not really just one guy. It's everybody else. But maybe he's a little bit different than everybody when he puts on that helmet. Joey Logano had a great speed weeks to kick off the season by winning his dual race Thursday night and showed the strength of that 22 car in the Fords. He had a great car at the beginning, running up at the front, leading a lot of laps, working with his fellow Ford manufacturer teammates, slipped to the middle of the pack in stage number 3 and was kind of riding there for a while, and you were wondering, could he work his way back to the front if things worked out for him? And they did. He was able to work his way up to the top 5 in the final 13 laps of the race before we had overtime. He had the lead briefly down the backstretch before Stenhouse made the pass, before we went to second overtime. And at the moment of caution, Joey Logano was just a few inches behind Stenhouse and lost the Daytona 500. A second place finish, nonetheless, is a great start to his defense of his Cup Series title. But he opened up post-race and said, they could have pushed the button to activate the yellow lights a little quicker because I saw what was going on behind me. They could have pushed it a little quicker and I would have been in front. Well, you know, NASCAR, they pushed the button for the yellow lights when they did, and unfortunately Logano was not in front of Stenhouse. But nonetheless, despite coming up short of another Harley J. Earl trophy, Joey Logano is out to a great start as a defending Cup champion in 2023. Number 3, controversy between commercial breaks, too many of them, and the finish of the race under caution. Let's start with the commercial breaks. When you watch the Great American Race, the Daytona 500, everybody's excited about watching the guys racing side by side, 190 plus miles per hour all day long, side by side, 3 wide, giving everybody a great show on television if you're not able to attend the race. We saw some great racing on television, but at the same time, there was people complaining about too many commercial breaks. I counted 23 commercial breaks in total for this race yesterday, and there were fans on Twitter and on social media that were absolutely adamant at Fox for showing too many commercial breaks. We want 10 or more laps of racing before you guys cut to commercial break, and they kept cutting commercial break after about 7-8 laps of competition, which I can understand the frustration. I personally didn't really have a problem with it. I was just excited to see NASCAR back and the season get underway with its most prestigious race. But I can understand the fans' frustration. They want at least 10 to 12, 15 laps of green flag racing on live television and not cutting the commercial break so quickly after they came back from break about 3 or 4 minutes ago. And there are also people complaining about when you go to side-by-side coverage, you don't know if an incident's going to happen, which one did. And people were, frustrated saying you couldn't have, you had to cut the commercial break that quickly or side by side that quickly, not have the announcers take on what's going on in the track, especially if there's an incident going on. I can understand the frustration, but, unfortunately, Fox has, the rights to call the Daytona 500, but they also have a lot of money to show the commercials that they plan on showing in, the Great American Race. The same goes for the Super Bowl, obviously. Super Bowl is more widely well known in the 500 as a big event for everybody to watch. They get paid to show these commercials and new ads for their brands for 2023. And I get, why NASCAR and Fox have to do it, but at the same time, it just really frustrates the fans. And the other controversial part was the finish of the race. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won the 500 under the moment of caution ahead of Joey Logano. The reason why is because in turns 1 and 2, there was an incident where Eric Almirola bumped into the back of Travis Pastrana and turned him into Kyle Larson and set up a chain reaction and a wreck that collected guys like Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Brad Keselowski, and a few others as well. And fans were pretty upset that NASCAR threw the caution flag and didn't let them race back to the line. They're like, what happened to the golden days where NASCAR would let the guys, if there's a caution, and especially the last lap of the race back to the line. Let's determine who's going to beat out who when they get back to the start-finish line. Well, in this case of the previous years, NASCAR has kind of, decided we need to throw the caution because there's a big wreck going on behind, and there are guys coming from behind that maybe aren't part of that big pack, and they could run into trouble and run into guys. And some guys could be hurt. That's why they needed the medical cars, the ambulances, to get to driver's care to make sure, are you okay? Do you need any assistance with anything? I can understand why the fans are frustrated. Would I have loved to see a finish to the start-finish line? Absolutely. But at the same time, safety of the drivers is very, very important. And when there's a big wreck behind them with about 10, 12 guys bunched up together, you can't really continue on. You got to throw the caution and just freeze the field so the ambulance workers can quickly get to the scene of the crash before, they may be too late if there's an incident that, someone could be very, very hurt. I understand the frustration, but unfortunately, those are rules. And I understand people are really frustrated with the amount of commercials we had yesterday, as well as the race ending under yellow. All the races this weekend ended under yellow. The Xfinity race ended under yellow. The truck race really ended under the red flag because of Mother Nature. The only race that actually didn't end under the yellow was the ARCA Menards race on Saturday. So it sucks, but unfortunately, that's how the NASCAR officiating, they have to maintain these cautions so they can quickly get to these drivers' aid as quickly as possible. It's nothing really much you could do about it, but I can understand people's frustration with those two controversial moments yesterday. Number 4, drivers that came so close to winning the Great American Race as former Cup champions are going to have to wait another year. And those drivers turn out to be Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, and Martin Truex Jr. 3 guys that have been very, very strong in NASCAR over the years, that have won championships, but are all still searching for their first Daytona 500. They're going to have to wait another year or so before they can come back and try to win it again. Starting off with Martin Truex Jr., a man who missed the playoffs last year, didn't win a single race, came in this year pretty much with the determination that he's driving angry. He wants to get back to being the Martin Truex Jr. that we've known for winning races and competing for a championship. And he kicked it off by winning the Busch Light Clash at the Coliseum 2 weeks ago and pretty much showed off how determined he was to get back to being up at the front this year. And yesterday's race, he had a good race car. He ran top 5, top 10 a lot. It looked like he was about to win stage 1 until he got past late and had to settle for some stage points in the second position. He had a top 5. He had a good race car yesterday and looked like he was in position to, if he couldn't win, to at least finish in the top 10. But with 20 laps to go, he was caught up in a wreck in turns 1 and 2 where there was an accordion effect in front of him with the Fords. One of them got spun around into the middle of the pack, and Truex was a part of it. And unfortunately, they took him out of contention to win the 500. If Truex did win this race, it would have been in car number 19 on February the 19th in his 19th try to win the Daytona 500. Unfortunately, the numbers never materialized. But yet, Truex was able to actually finish in the 15th position because there was a lot of chaos at the end of the race, and he was able to pass all those cars with the amount of damage he had in his car, which I cannot believe. But unfortunately, Truex will have to wait till next year. Then there's Brad Keselowski, a man who dominated the Daytona 500 last year in his first year with Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. He had a great car, but on the overtime restart, he got shuffled from third back to ninth and had to wait another year. And this year, once again, came down with another strong number 6 car, and he was so dominant in the pretty much the dominant forward of the race. They ran up in the top 5 and the top 10. They actually won stage 1 when they passed Truex with 1 to go in the tri-oval and won stage 1. He carried those extra bonus points and had a good car at the beginning of stage number 2, slipped to the back at one point, and then worked his way back to the front with about 50 laps to go, and it looked like if things had worked out for him, he would have been on his way to winning. The Fords got split up on the pit stops, then the caution came out, and then Keselowski and his teammate that he worked well with pretty much the entire race, Chris Buescher, worked their way back to the front with 12 laps to go, and it looked like they were going to be on their way to getting Roush Fenway and back in the Daytona 500 victory lane, and Keselowski would finally get the Harley JL trophy. But the Chevys ganged up on him on the backstretch with 4 laps to go. He got passed on the outside by the Chevy guys, and he slipped back, and he had to go through overtime. It looked like he was going to get a top 10, but he was part of that big wreck on the last lap. And unfortunately, he's going to have to wait another year. Another strong car by Brad Keselowski in the Daytona 500 down at a super speedway, but just couldn't put it together. And then we have the most polarizing driver in NASCAR, Kyle Busch. His first official start with Richard Childress Racing in the number 8 car. A man who started at the back of the field because he wrecked his primary car in the duels Thursday after getting dumped from behind by Daniel Suarez. While the backup car turned out to be a relatively good race car like his primary was. He ran in the middle of the pack, worked his way up to the front, then in the middle of pit stops in stage 2, he got caught for speeding. He fell up down, but he got his lap back at the end of stage 2, and then worked his way back to the front, and seemed like he was in position as he took the lead from Brad Keselowski with 4 laps to go. It looked like Kyle was on his way to getting Richard Childress his 4th Daytona 500 as an owner, and long last Kyle would finally win the Great American Race. But with 2 laps to go, Daniel Suarez spun off of turn number 4, bringing out the caution, and Kyle Busch was not happy about it on the radio, saying, if that was 1998, we would have ended the race and we would have won the Daytona 500. Reflecting back to when Dale Earnhardt 25 years ago won the Great American Race after 20 years of trying to win it. He won it with 2 laps to go when they threw the caution flag for an incident off of turn number 2 involving the late John Andretti and Lake Speed. That time, we didn't have overtime to have a dash to the finish. This time around we do, and Kyle Busch was not happy about it on the radio. He lost the lead in the first restart. He lost his drafting buddy Austin Dillon after he got caught up in a wreck on the backstretch at 7. No overtime. Kyle looked like he was going to at least finish in the top 5, but he was part of that wreck in turn 1 on the last lap and had to settle for a 19th place finish. Really unfortunate for all 3 of those guys. They had great race cars, and it looked like they were all in position to finally win that illustrious Daytona 500, but unfortunately, they're going to have to wait until next year. And number 5, the racing product at Daytona with the side-by-side action and the chaos at the end. It was a fun, entertaining day. Let me give a shout-out to these guys. The majority of this race, like from lap 1 all the way to lap 180, these guys were in a well-ordered, clean, solid race all day. Good side-by-side action. There was bump drafting, yes. There was big runs on the top and on the bottom, depending on who was leading them, yes. But there was good, solid racing all day. It didn't have to be a wreck fest to make this a great 500. It just had to be good, productive racing where guys were battling it out side-by-side. Runs were coming from the top or the bottom. There was good side-by-side action all day long. The only incident that we saw in the beginning of the race, the majority of the first part of the race, was towards the end of stage 2 when Kevin Harvick, who was making his final Daytona 500 start, got to the back of Tyler Reddick in the 45 car briefly in turn 3. It was like a little tiny bump, but that was enough to send Reddick around and into the wall. It collected Ryan Blaney and it collected other guys, Eric Jones, who spawned at the bottom and ricocheted back up to traffic and collected Chase Elliott. Elliott, Jones, and Reddick were officially done for the day. Ryan Blaney, however, was able to continue with all the damage he had, and he actually came away with an 8th place finish with that damage to that race car, which I cannot believe. Then the next incident that we had was with 20 laps to go when there was an accordion effect in turns 1 and 2 where the Fords who were trying to work their way back up, one of them got a little too high, stacked everyone out from behind, and Ryan Preece in his first Daytona 500 for Stuart Haas got turned around and spun right back in the middle of the pack, collecting Harvick in his final 500, Michael McDowell, the 2021 winner, Truex, and Chase Briscoe. 2 out of those 5 drivers involved were done for the day, Preece and Briscoe, and it sucks because Ryan Preece was doing very well in his first 500 for Stenhouse Racing. Harvick and Truex and McDowell were able to continue. Harvick finished in 12th. Truex finished in 15th. McDowell finished a couple laps down. Then the intensity picked up again when, with 2 to go, Suarez spun off of turn number 4, setting up the overtime restarts and led into what turned out to be the longest Daytona 500 at 212 laps, 530 miles. Down the backstretch in the first overtime, after Stenhouse took the lead from Logano, Austin Dillon in the middle of the pack got bumped from behind by William Byron, got turned around and ricocheted back into traffic, collecting William Byron. Austin Cindric, the defending winner of the race, Todd Gilliland, Riley Herbst, Zane Smith, Ross Chastain, couple other guys, and Jimmy Johnson in his return to NASCAR Cup Series competition after a few years away from the sport driving for IndyCar. Johnson did a really good job all day. He ran a good race car after starting 39th. They ran up at the front in times in the top 5 and top 10. It looked like he was going to come away with a good finish, but unfortunately, him being part of that big wreck in the first overtime took him out of it. And then, of course, obviously, the big wreck on the last lap in turns 1 and 2 with Larson, Almirola, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, Travis Pastrana, who came away with 11th place finish, entered the race under caution. But again, it didn't have to be a wreck fest. I mean, the wrecks that we saw didn't materialize until the final 20 laps of the race. It was a well-balanced, well-ordered, solid race yesterday with good racing at the first 180 laps. Good side-by-side action. You couldn't ask for anything more than that. It was a good race in general yesterday. I was very proud of everybody using their heads and driving well, especially in those end of those stages, because sometimes on super speedways they can get a little out of hand. They were well balanced in these stages this year, so I give everyone kudos for using their heads for the majority of yesterday's race. And another thing I enjoyed from yesterday's race was the pre-race ceremonies. Obviously, you enjoy them a lot. We had, obviously the invocation. We had the national anthem singing, as well as the flyover from the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. But one thing I really loved was, before we got ready to give the command to start engines, the president of NASCAR, Steve Phelps, addressing the fans of NASCAR its 75th year and saying that you fans are what makes NASCAR important to us and what makes the sport what it is. The drivers may have changed, come and go throughout the years. The cars may have changed, but your loyalty to our sport does not change, and we thank you so much. And they were given a standing ovation. And then the command to start the race was it was just the right way to get the season started with the legends of the sport, guys that have won championships and that have won the Daytona 500, drivers that have, made themselves incredible careers in the past and or currently are, included 7-time NASCAR champion and Daytona 500 champion Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, the 1983 champion and 2-time Daytona 500 winner, Bill Elliott, the 1988 champion and 2-time Daytona 500 winner, Dale Jarrett, the 1999 champion and 3-time Daytona 500 winner, Jeff Gordon, 3-time Daytona 500 winner and 4-time Cup champion, Jimmy Johnson, 7-time Cup champion, 2-time Daytona 500 winner, Kevin Harvick, the 2014 champ and the 2007 winner of the Great American Race, Kurt Busch, who for the first time since 2000, we don't have a driver that ran in the 500 with Dale Earnhardt in his last 500 last race, the 2017 winner of the race and 2004 champ, and of course, Joey Logano, the 2015 winner of the 500 and the 2-time Cup champion, all came together to give the command to start the Great American Race. It's really special, especially when 3 of those guys given the command had to jump into their cars. And that's why those 3 cars were lined up at the front of the grid on pit road, so they could quickly get to the cars, and then they would find their spots before we got ready to go racing. The command was so awesome. The pre-race, everything. It was just a great moment to kick off NASCAR's 75th season. I really enjoyed yesterday's Daytona 500 and everything that made it what it is, the Great American Race. So with that being said, the first race of the season is officially in the books, and the new season is officially underway. Next week, we're off to Fontana, California at Auto Club Speedway for the final time on the 2-mile configuration. Last year, we saw incredible racing, something that we haven't seen in quite some time. We had a great race last year, side-by-side action with this next-gen car. Really kind of, brought back the nostalgic moments of good, solid racing in previous years that we saw with the Gen 4 car and at times with the Gen 5 car. The next-gen car really saved 2-mile and mile-and-a-half racing last year. This, however, is the last race for the 2-mile configuration before it gets converted to a 3/4 mile track. So let's hope we can get this 2-mile track next week a proper setup with some great racing, and maybe we can get an exciting finish. So the big questions entering this race: will Kyle Larson defend his win here from a year ago? Will Tyler Reddick make up for one that got away a year ago when he was so dominant? Or can Ricky Stenhouse Jr. carry momentum off of winning the biggest race of his life and back it up with another solid performance next weekend? All that remains to be seen. You just got to tune in to find out. And I'm so excited that NASCAR's back and our season's officially underway. So hope you all enjoyed the Daytona 500. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the race. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I personally enjoyed it myself. And I'm looking forward to what should be another solid year of NASCAR. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, like, and once again, congratulations to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG Doherty Racing on winning the 65th Daytona 500. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!